Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more MBTI. This is one that I definitely did not think I was going to be doing for a couple of different reasons. For number one, the whole reason I started doing MBTI is because Jordan Peterson told me to clean my room. That's the whole reason I started trying to get things in order. That's why I tried the Big Five. Was not a good fit for me, so I tried the MBTI system, and those just didn't work correctly. So I changed it. I made things a little bit different, and we'll go over that in a minute. But it's all because of Jordan Peterson telling me to clean my room. He is the whole reason I got things in order, and he's the whole reason I'm on this channel at all. Also, I'm dealing with destiny, and here's the thing. I try to keep an open mind about pretty much everything. I have my convictions, right? I'm not going to transgress my convictions, but I like to hear opposing viewpoints. I listen to all kinds of people, but I have very rarely heard a good take from destiny. I have a rule, right? It's been a rule, but we're going to break that rule today, and that rule is don't listen to Destiny because he is almost always uninformed, right? He is just arguing for the sake of arguing because he doesn't understand what he's arguing about. And I really want to understand why that is. And so I'm going to do this in my system, and I'm going to try to get some indicators of how Destiny thinks so that I can identify things that I identify with and see, right? The whole point of this is so that you can find things that you identify with whoever it is that we're doing a typology thing on. I'm not a doctor. Don't even try to pretend to be. I'm not diagnosing anyone. We're just identifying traits that can help you to help yourself. I want to give people a toolbox that they can use to help build themselves up in the same way that I use this toolbox to build myself up. And several other people that I know personally have used it as well. It has had some limited good results. And so I'm willing to put it out there for other people to use. We have 5 things that we are looking for, just like the Big Five, just like a lot of other things. And my 5 key indicators are just a little bit different than the Big Five. They are listed directly below me right here. And it is 5 dichotomous choices, right? You are either A or B. You either concentrate mainly on things or ideas. You are either in the here and now into the past or the here and now into the future. It's things that you can put your hands on versus not. Within those 2 categories, you are either getting new ones or old ones. You are either seeking out all the new things or you are sorting through all the old things. You do that either for yourself or for the tribe. And the reason that your focus is there and it's you either get the thing and you use it first and then give it to the tribe, or you give it to the tribe and then you use it. The tribe is not everyone. The tribe is whoever you have decided is important. The way that you do that is either rigid or flexible. You are either firmly set that this is the way that I'm going to do these things, or we're going to take your ideas into consideration and see how we can make that work for everyone involved. And you do that by either being direct or informative, right? The way that you talk. Are you giving all the information and then stopping? Or do you chase rabbit holes? Are you going off on this topic and off on this topic and off on this topic? Is your talking circular? Are you repeating the same points? All of these things lay you out in this grid. That does not mean that you are isolated to one particular type of behavior. Everybody uses their full stack all the time to varying degrees of effectiveness. This is a toolbox to help you get that sorted out, to figure out how to use the bottom part of your stack where you don't get a lot of energy and integrate it to where your whole stack is a balance, making you a balanced human being. With all that being said, we are going to dive into the interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson and Destiny. We're a few minutes ahead. We're almost into the 3rd segment in the timeline down here at the bottom. I give him a little bit of time to get comfortable so that he is not feeling antagonism or any of that. And we're just going to see how the conversation naturally progresses. We are looking for these type indicators so that we can figure out how the mind works, how information comes in, and then how it is relayed. Let's go.
Change the way that I guess.
So you
view
got
the
more
structure of society.
attuned to the consequences of inequality? Is that a
Basically, I would
reasonable way
say,
of thinking about it?
yeah.
Okay, and so that, okay, how did that lead you to develop more sympathy for left-leaning ideas, particularly?
I guess my core beliefs have never really changed, but I think the way that those become applied kind of change. So much the same way that you might think that everybody deserves a shot to go to school and have an education. That might be like a core belief where, as a libertarian or conservative, I might think that as long as a school is available, everybody's got the opportunity to go and study. But maybe
Okay, so we're getting some tribe, we're getting some flex, right? We're having a couple of different ideas of what could be, so that's some flex. It's not really grounded in things or ideas yet that I'm able to determine anyway. He's talking about a lot of ideas, but we're early in the conversation. He's talking about ideas, so it's supposed to be that way. But he is making a lot of tribe statements, right? He's had a couple of I statements, but a lot of this is the focus on how the tribe is going to react. That's a tribe feeling type of vibe. So let's keep going.
maybe now as like a liberal or progressive or whatever you'd call me, I might say, okay, well, we need to make sure that there's enough, maybe like food in the household or some kind of funding program to make sure the kid can actually go to school and study, basically. So like the core drive is the same, but I think the applied principle ends up changing a bit based.
Okay, so that's grounded into the here, into the past, right? That's the more of a things feel. He has what he considers solutions for this thing.
Right, so is your concern essentially something like the observation that if people are bereft enough of substance, let's say, that it's difficult for them to take advantage of equal opportunities, even if they are presented to them, let's say?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And you have some belief, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have some belief that there is room for state intervention at the level of basic provision to make those opportunities more manifest.
Yeah, to varying degrees, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this is given a very direct vibe, right? He is answering, yeah, like very short, very clip, no explanation. So that's given a direct vibe.
Okay. Okay, so let's.
And then he's also very structure oriented, right? That lends more towards the organized side of things because the organized type of people like to have the structure built in, and structure is the state to a large degree.
Let's start talking more broadly then on the political side. So how would you characterize the difference, in your opinion, between the left and the conservative political viewpoints?
On a very, very, very broad.
Okay, define the tribes.
Broad level. If there's some, I would say if there's some like good world that we're all aiming for, I think people on the left seem to think that a collection of taxes from a large population that goes into a government that's able to precisely kind of dole out where that tax money goes. You're basically able to take the problems of society. You're able to scrape off, hopefully, not super significant amount of money from people that can afford to give a lot of money, and then through government programs and redistribution, you target those taxes essentially to people that kind of need whatever bare minimum to take advantage of opportunities.
Okay, so that's kind of a things-oriented approach to the differentiation between the ideas of the two sides, right? He only did one side, his tribe. He identifies with this side, so he feels more qualified to talk about that side first. But it is a more things-oriented and a best things-oriented thing. Now, I don't have to agree that the state is the best thing to distribute the money, but that seems to be what the underlying core of this is that he believes that the best thing is for the state to take this money and redistribute it, as opposed to the best idea is that equality, right? This is a best thing that the state take the literal thing, the money, from the literal things, the people, and distribute it to the literal things, other people. It's not a whole lot of high-level ideal. This is, right? It's not preaching communism, but it is on a very tangential level. Like, it's funny that he's focused on things and communism.
Society, yeah.
Okay.
And then on the conservative end, I guess.
But that gives me a things organized, right? That is things old, as opposed to things new.
conservative would generally think that, why would the government take my money? I think from a community point of view, through
Again,
churches, through
things.
community action, through families, we can better allocate our own
Three things.
dollars to our own friends and family to help them and give them the things that they need so that they can better participate in and thrive in society, basically.
Yeah, and again, that's very things, very tribe, pretty flexible because he didn't denigrate the ideas that he obviously does not agree with, right? He didn't bring it down, so he's being flexible about it as opposed to saying something very controlling. Now, it's funny because if you see him, he's very much locked in, and that can be an indicator for control. But there's a reason why we talk about the patterns of thought and the patterns of speech as opposed to the movement and the rigidity there, because that can just be nerves, right?
Okay, so one of the things that I've always found a mystery, I mean, I think there's an equal mystery on the left and on the right in this regard, is that the more conservative types tend to be very skeptical of big government, and the leftist types tend to be more skeptical of big corporations. Right? Well, so following through the logic that you just laid out, you made this.
Okay, so he doesn't necessarily agree, but he doesn't want to say it. That is flexing, right? Flexing around the idea that Jordan just spoke.
Suggest
he kind of agrees, but doesn't really. So.
That one of the things that characterizes people on the left is the belief that government can act as an agent of can and should act as an agent of distribution. Okay, a potential problem for that is the gigantism of the government that does that. Now, the conservatives are skeptical of that gigantism, and likewise, the liberals, the progressives in particular, we'll call them progressives, are skeptical of the reach of gigantic corporations. And I've always seen a commonality in those two, in that both of them are skeptical of gigantism. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about, generally speaking, with regard to the potential for the rise of tyranny is the emergence of giants. And one potential problem with the view that the government can and should act as an agent of redistribution is that there is an incentive put in place, two kinds of incentives. Number one, a major league incentive towards gigantism and tyranny. And number two, an incentive for psychopaths who use compassion to justify their grip on power, to take money and to claim that they're doing good.
On either side.
And I see that happening everywhere now in the name of, particularly in the name of compassion. And it's one of the things that's made me very skeptical, in particular about the left, and at least about the progressive edge of the left. So I'm curious about what you think about those two. First of all, it's a paradox.
That was a new idea. He's writing it down. He's keeping track of it.
To me.
All right, that's organization.
That the conservatives and the leftists face off each other with regard to their concern about different forms of gigantism, and don't seem to notice that the thing that unites them is some antipathy. This is especially true for the libertarians, some antipathy towards gigantic structures per se. And so then I would say, with regards to your antithesis between liberalism and conservatives, the conservatives are pointing to the fact that there are intermediary forms of distribution that can be utilized to solve the social problems that you're describing that don't bring with them the associated problem of gigantism. And like it's been shocking to me.
Jordan's leaning in. Let's watch the body language, if we can, of Destiny here real quick, though, because he's not interjecting, right? So we're leaning away informative automatically. And we're leaning away control. If he was taking control of the situation and trying to interrupt Jordan while he's making these points, that would be a level of control. But he's not. He's already demonstrated flexibility, right? He's already demonstrated the willingness to flex around the tribe. So
to watch the left, especially in the last 6 years, ally itself, for example, with pharmaceutical companies.
Jordan likes to talk almost as much as me.
Which was something I'd never thought I would see in my lifetime. I mean, for decades, the only gigantic corporations the left was more skeptical of than the fossil fuel companies were the pharmaceutical companies. And that all seemed to vanish overnight around the COVID time. So I know the story. That's a lot of things to throw at you, but it sort of outlines the territory that we could probably investigate productively.
Yeah, so a couple things. I would say that the current political landscape we have, I think, is less. I understand the concept of conservatives supporting corporations and liberals supporting like large government. I think today the divide we're starting to see more and more is more of like a populist, anti-populist rise, or even like an institutional or anti-institutional rise. So, for instance, I think conservatives today in the United States are largely characterized with, I would say, with populism, in that they're supporting like certain figures, namely.
Okay. Here's one of those problems that I have with Destiny, right? Populism means the will of the people, not the guy, right? The guy is the figurehead that shows the will of the people, but populism itself is the will of the people. It's not a bad thing. When there's a populist candidate, that's because he is representing the population. Like, that's one of the problems I have, right? That's one of my issues, right? I'm a very much a freedom person, and like, they're acting like populism is a bad thing. It can be. Don't get me wrong. You can absolutely be swept away by a charismatic leader in a wave of populism to do horrible things. So you should be on guard regardless of who it is. Okay, yeah. So, yeah.
Right now, Donald Trump, who they think alone can kind of like lead them against the corrupt institutions, be them corporate or government. I feel like most conservatives today are not as trustful of big corporations as they were back in like the Bush era,
That's
where
true.
we would, conservatives would champion, big corporations.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. I don't
That's
think
a strange thing because it.
Right, and that's the defining characteristic between the populist movement, the MAGA movement, which is populist, as opposed to the corporate Republicans who are part of the uniparty, right? The Democrat and the Republican and the Democrat, right? So that's the defining characteristic between what we the people want and the rest of the Republican Party, who is screaming that we're not Republican.
It makes the modern conservatives a lot more like
I'm getting spun up. I need to get back on them.
the 60s leftists.
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, that brings us into the issue, too, of whether the left-right divide is actually a reasonable way of construing the current political landscape at
Absolutely
all.
not. It's communist capitalist. That's the way to describe it.
Not sure it is, but
Right now, it kind of is, but only because so many conservatives are following Trump. So, like, you're populist.
That is some tribe pushback, right? That is a completely uninformed take. Like, that one of the reasons why I had the rule "don't listen to Destiny" is because he gets this feedback from his tribe. And here's the thing, right? Destiny started out as a streamer, which is cool. I completely commiserate. I watch people stream games. I enjoy that type of thing. But just because you can stream something does not mean that you are equipped to debate on topics, right? And if your primary source of information is the people who are watching you stream, the chances are that they're not informed either. And so if you have uninformed, informing uninformed, you have uninformed takes. Destiny very rarely has an informed take, right? He has the uninformed informing him of what his form should be. He's very tribe, he's very flex, so
Anti-populist thing kind of maps on kind of cleanly to the left and right. It doesn't work with progressives, though, or the far left, because they're also anti-large everything. So in a surprising way,
no, they're not anti-large government.
On very, very far left people, you might find them having a bit more in common with kind of like a MAGA Trump supporter than like a center-left liberal. So, for instance, like both of these groups of people on the very far left will be very dovish on foreign policy, probably a little bit more isolationist. They're not a big fan of like a ton of immigration or a ton of trade with other countries. They might think that there's a lot of institutional capture of both government and corporations. So both all of the MAGA
We're getting things, right? We're getting lists of things.
supporters and the far, far left might think that corporations don't have our best interest at heart and the government is corrupt and captured by lobbyists.
Yeah,
You'll see a lot of overlap there.
right.
I think that sometimes there's a couple things. One, this is something I feel like I've discovered. People have no principles. I think that people are largely guided by whatever is kind of satisfying them or making them feel good at the time. I think it's a really important thing to understand because people's beliefs.
Okay, so he's talking about people again, right? He's talking about tribe again. He's pushing back into the tribe as opposed to talking about his own belief and his own things, right? He's saying, I think that the tribe is, right? That's more tribe than self, right? He could be making a lot more self statements, but he's not. And so that's leaning me to tribe. We are getting things. We are getting organized. We are getting flexible. We're getting tribe, and we're getting direct. So we're just about where we need to be in order to, yeah, let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and do the transition now. Normally I let them finish, but we're going to come back to the confirmations directly into this convo. Right, so we're looking at things. That's going to give us an S. We are looking at old. That is going to give us a J. We are looking at tribe. That's going to be an E. And then we are looking at flex. So that is going to be an F. So we are looking at an ESFJ. All right, let me get that set up real quick. ESFJ. Where is my this should be in an alphabetical order, and it is not, so I'm a little bit annoyed. All right, so what we are dealing with here is an ESFJ. Now, is he direct or is he informative? He seems to be direct, so that means that the third slot, this third eye slot right here, is going to be he is direct, it is introverted. So that means we're going to be looking at an ESFJ alternate. Let's figure out what that's going to mean. He's going to be, without even thinking about it, concerned about the tribe's morals and how they feel, right? That is what FE is. And that slot is you do it without even thinking about it. You have over 90% reception of good energy right here. It is very easy, however, to get caught in this energy. If he feels like he is making everyone feel good, he is going to love that. And he's going to feed into that loop, and that can explain why he gets some of that uninformed information. The SI is what has happened. He's going to be concerned about that, these things that have happened. He's going to like his organization. He's taking notes on the conversation. He's going to like to have the points in order. He may not necessarily, however, do the logic checks necessary to make sure that it is working right. But even though he doesn't necessarily do those logic checks like it is in his third eye, he's still going to get very defensive over that logic. Whether or not he has done it, like he could be doing the best logic checks ever and he's going to get defensive. Or he could be doing none and he's going to be getting defensive. This area does not get a lot of reception of energy, right? So it feeds in from the top and the bottom, and you can get stuck at the top and the bottom. And as you progress through to the middle of the stack, you get low frequency information in. So he's going to get defensive over his logic, right? If people start pressing him on it, he's going to get very defensive over that. And he's going to miscommunicate the new ideas. He's going to have a problem seeing the possibilities that could come from all of the things that he's doing in a stack, right? Feeding into the tribe in the way that he does is he's going to overlook all of the possibilities that could come from that. It's not intentional. He just is oblivious to it. He doesn't get barely any reception right here. It's like 10% at these next two slots, right? And so you get the information, you just get it heavily filtered, and you get it without a whole lot of emphasis. If, however, he can get into his own morals, if he can figure out where he actually stands on things, that is going to be where he wants to be, right? Where his heart is, where his growth can come from. What's going to feed that is the current things, is the exploration, is finding new things to now sort. He can do the sorting part. That's way up at the top of the stack. He's got a problem getting the correct information in. That's way down here at the bottom. Where he's going to mess up is other people's thoughts, right? This is where you are going to intentionally choose the wrong thing. Most of the time, 75% of the time, if you have something about other people's thoughts, you are choosing the wrong side of it. And that is because your NI is kaput. That means that you are no good whatsoever at choosing the best thing. It's one of those things, right? I am absolutely terrible at organization. That is my spot right here. I forget all kinds of things. You're going to overlook all the possibilities and not be able to narrow down the ones that you have. If you do narrow down a possibility, there is a high likelihood it is the wrong possibility. And so you're really going to need to work on strengthening this, of picking the correct possibilities. But this is a hard base to work on, because in order to do that, you have to have the possibilities there to choose from. I go into more depth in this. If you would like to check it out, there will be a link for this particular ESFJ, so that you can understand how my system works and how you can build yourself up. If you identify with the things we have identified inside of Destiny here, these are traits, right? This is not who he is as forever. Everybody uses all of the things, they use them in a different manner. So within the same type, people will act differently. People are different. But generally speaking, he is going to be focused on the same things. He is going to be focused on people's feelings above everything, of what the tribe's morals are ethics. Then he's going to be focused on organizing the things. He's going to miscommunicate about his logic, and then he's going to miss the possibilities. So we're going to look for some more confirmation of these particular traits just to see if we're right, right? That does not mean that he absolutely has to be this particular type. He could be something completely different. I could be completely off base. We are putting this out here to help people try to help themselves. And so we're going to see what's up. Let's go.
Beliefs will seem to change at random. If you're trying to imagine that a belief is coming from some underlying principle or is governed by some internal, like moral or reasonable code or whatever. I think generally there are large social groups and people kind of follow them along from thing to thing, which is why you end up in strange worlds sometimes where, like the position on vaccines and being an anti-vaxxer might have been seen as something, 10 years ago as kind of like a hippie leftist, and now maybe it's more like a conservative, or it's associated more with like MAGA Trump supporters or whatever. I think as a result of how the social groups move around. When it comes to you mentioned this like gigantism thing. That's another thing where I'm not sure if people actually care about gigantism or if they're using it as a proxy for other things that they don't like.
Okay, so he's bringing his logic into this, right? He's explaining his side of this. And so this is, like, he's not super defensive. He's not like, "Arr," but this is defensive logic, right? He has made his notes as he went along because he's looking at these possibilities. Now, whether he is logicked through them or just made notes so that he can spit what he already knows is up for debate.
Like, I could totally imagine a
Well,
person.
I care about it.
Sure, yeah, you might. Yeah, sorry. It just
That's
mean
okay.
in general.
That's
yeah.
okay.
Because like I could imagine somebody saying that like they don't trust like a large government, they think there's too much prone to tyranny or something like that, but also be supportive of an institution like the Catholic Church, which is literally one guy who has a direct line to
Right, but
God.
they can't tax.
I don't support either one of those.
Well, I mean, there's
And they don't have a military.
that
And
is
they can't
That's up for debate.
conscript you.
true.
Right?
Yeah.
And they can't throw you in jail.
That is true. Yeah. I mean,
Right. Well, those are major and significant. I mean, I get the overlap. Don't get me wrong.
sure, but I'm saying like even if you had a local government, like if you had a state government or a tribe, usually they've got some form of enacting punishment. It'll be sometimes more brutal, but they can throw you in jail.
Yeah, it's because people are stupid and they need that.
Usually they've got some form of enacting punishment. It'll be
Okay, again, we're bringing it to the tribe, right? He's defending his logic, absolutely. And he's talking more in the morals, right? He really is talking about what is the best for everyone. So that is a very moral or ethics or argument to take. I keep saying morals. His morals are way down in his stack. So.
sometimes more brutal, but they can throw you in jail. Conscription hasn't existed in the U.S. since the Vietnam War.
And again, this is one of those things. Conscription absolutely exists. We just don't utilize it. There's a difference, right? If we didn't have the concept of selective service, maybe you can make the argument that conscription doesn't exist, but that is not a valid argument. Your logic is a little bit flawed here, but you're quite defensive over it, right? You think you're correct. You think that the tribe has already informed you in the things. But we do have selective service. You, yourself, sir, are eligible for the draft. We just have not had the need for one since the Vietnam War. That is a big, big, big distinction.
I mean, yeah, yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
So yeah, I think that I guess when I look at
So this is so. Let's go back. Well, let's go back to
sure.
the redistribution issue. I mean, we pay 65% of our income at, say, upper middle class to upper middle class level in Canada. It isn't obvious to me at all that that money is well used. In fact, quite the contrary. In my country now, our citizens make 60% of, they produce 60% of what you produce in the US. That's plummeted over the last 20 years as state intervention has increased. I'm not convinced that the claim that the interests of people who lack opportunity are best served by state intervention. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, first of all, I'm aware of the relationship between inequality and social problem. There's a very well-developed literature on that, and it essentially shows that the more arbitrary, the broader the reach of inequality in a political institution of any given size, the more social unrest. So where all people are poor, there isn't much social unrest, and where all people are rich, there isn't much social unrest. But when there's a big gap between the two, there's plenty, and that's mostly driven by disaffected young men who aren't very happy that they can't climb the hierarchy. There are barriers in their way. And so there is reason to ameliorate relative poverty. The problem with that, to some degree, is that most attempts to ameliorate relative poverty tend to increase absolute poverty, and they do it dramatically. And the only solution that we've ever been able to develop to that is something approximating a free market system. I wouldn't call it a capitalist system because I think that's capture of the terminology by the radical leftists. It's a free exchange system, and the price you pay for a free exchange system is you still have inequality, but the advantage you gain is that the absolute levels of privation plummet. And I think the data on that I think they're absolutely conclusive, especially, and that's been especially demonstrated in the radical...
Okay, so this is directly going against the logic, right? So it's going to be very interesting to see how this resolves.
Increase in rates of poverty since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989, because we've lifted more people out of poverty in the last 4 decades than we had in the entire course of human history up to that date. And that's not least because the statist interventionist types who argued for a radical state-sponsored redistribution lost the Cold War, right? And that freed up Africa to some degree, and certainly the Southeast Asian countries, to pursue something like a free trade economy. And that instantly made them rich, even China. So that's an argument, let's say, on the side of free exchange, but it's also an argument, a twofold argument, pointing out how we ameliorate absolute poverty, which should be a concern for leftists, but doesn't seem to be anymore, by the way, and also an argument for the maintenance of a necessary inequality. Like, I'm not sure that inequality can be decreased beyond a certain degree without that decrease causing other serious problems.
Right, without the removal of freedom.
And we can talk about that, but it's a complicated problem.
Yeah, for one point of clarification, when you say leftist, what do you mean by that?
Well, I was going with your definition, like essentially the core idea being something like the central problem being one of relative inequality and distribution of resources, and the central solution to that being something like state-sponsored economic intervention. I mean, there's other ways we could define left or right, and we can do that, but I'll stick with the one that you brought forward to begin with.
Gotcha. Okay. I only want to be clear on that because people get mad if I call myself a leftist. Oftentimes online or especially in Europe or worldwide, leftists will refer exclusively to like socialists or communists, and anybody to the right of that would be considered like a liberal.
This is being responsible for the organization right here, right? He is trying to clearly define that he is not quite a leftist because he doesn't hold quite pure enough views. and that is very much an organization trait.
Usually a fascist.
Well,
And like he's feeling responsible for correcting Jordan on this, even though he doesn't necessarily have the logic in place.
depending on who you're
Very
talking to,
rapidly.
Yeah, yeah.
Jordan has made his entire career about studying this particular topic, right? So, like, if there is an expert, it's probably Dr. Jordan Peterson here.
I just wanted to be clear on that. So I'm absolutely a pro-capitalist, pro-free-market guy. I'm never gonna.
Okay,
Let me
okay.
push back on the
Okay,
logic.
okay.
Push
Well,
back on the
that's
logic.
good. It's good to get that clear. Why?
Yeah. Because I would argue that when you look at like the fall of the Soviet Union, or you look at the failure of like socialist or communist regimes, I don't know if the issue there was so much redistribution. I think the problem.
That was one of many issues.
I don't think it was an issue at all. Actually, I would say I think the issue was.
That's some more
command-
logic pushback. And that's a good place to leave it, because I do want to not just take away from what Dr. Jordan Peterson is here, and the link will be provided down below. If you would like to see the conclusion of this, I will be watching it. I think we have a fairly good estimation of what we've got going on here. I think that the typing fits fairly well. I think that the confirmations fit fairly well. I will be looking for more, and you are more than welcome to. Dr. Peterson, I appreciate you bringing this guest on so that we can get a little bit clearer view about what we have going on with us. Destiny, I appreciate you showing up and discussing these things in an honest and forthright manner with a mind for some resolution, right? That is what we are hoping for out of all of these things. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat complicated topic, right? This is something that is new. It is not something that other people are doing in the way that I am doing it. It is a little bit different here. We're not doing this to permanently diagnose anyone with anything. You can change within your type, but you can't really change your type. You can grow within your type and mature as you become an older human being. Hopefully that is your goal, and hopefully I'm giving you some tools to help with that. The Infinite Integrations playlist, which is linked over here in the corner, will help you with that. If you follow it and you do the things that are in there, I have found success. Some other people have found success. You might not, but you are more than welcome to try. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.